Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Man, so I think we should probably start with a song. Why don't you give us a little jingle there, Taylor? Come on.
Welcome to Emotional Men Podcast. We start with a song. We literally have a theme song.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, I
It's
don't
coming
hear
in
it
right now.
Yeah, the problem is I don't hear it as part of the recording. So
Yeah, that's fair. Very fair. How you doing, Pete? Long time no see.
oh, pretty good. I sometimes imagine that my brain is overactive and I have Tesla coil electronic arms coming off the top of my head, like I'm a huge anode. But maybe
Why?
those were inside thoughts. I'm not sure.
I mean, is it because you got a little dome of a head?
I think that's it. The chrome dome looks like a Tesla coil.
Yes. Speaking of which, by the way, the world will have seen these by the time this comes out. But how about that Werverine, that bald Werverine being a therapist?
Your younger sister made it. It didn't look like
She AI'd it.
Yeah, she AI'd it. But man, that was one powerful looking therapist. Like
Yes.
and I can just imagine him with a notepad and this terrifying persona just going like, "Don't worry, it'll pass. Just as soon as the clouds go over, we'll be fine. Just do you need a minute? No? Okay, let's move on."
Sit with the discomfort.
Yeah, exactly. Do I frighten you? What is that like?
Yes. Maybe I'll make that the picture for the episode.
Oh yeah. Does being a therapist frighten you?
Well, not me personally, but
No. I mean that's the title across the Werverine. Yeah, being a therapist
Yes.
frightening. But today is the second episode of a two-part deal that Taylor and I are doing about talking about being a therapist. I think last time we talked about becoming a therapist, and today we wanted to dive into what it actually is like being a therapist. And I wish that I had something like this. I had, there was a couple of YouTube videos when it came to being a social worker, and it was a couple day in the life videos, and it showed some guy who's holding a camera walking from house to house, and he's like, well, I just talked to this family about, getting resources for such and such. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. You're outside, you're walking around. And what is it like being a clinical social worker? I didn't really have a lot I had a lot of books of what it's like to do therapy, but what the lived experience of like, what does it feel like? How to do it is one thing, but what does it feel like to be a therapist in your day to day? There's hardly anything out there about what it's like to be a therapist.
When I was getting my master's degree, I had to write a paper on the experience of working at, like, how to say it. It was like, we kind of had to think, what is the client's view when they walk into the building? And so what does it smell like? What does it feel like? Does it feel good? Are you nervous? And we had to talk about that in the context of the history of the entire place. And so it was like an experiential history of the thing. And I remember that a lot because I remember thinking, well, when people come into my office, they're going to have a very visceral experience one way or another. Visceral meaning just like a felt experience. And so whenever I've had a new office, I've always tried to think, well, how can I make this a positive visceral experience instead of a negative one?
When you say the history of the place, you're talking about that experience you had of like someone was shot across the street or something. Like, what is the community feeling of like being in this area as they're walking into your office?
That's my office I just left. I'm talking like I did my internship at a place called Navos. I should probably stop chewing ice while I'm talking.
Chewing ice. He's trying to ASMR as well as talk about it.
You see what I did during my
Oh, please stop. Oh man, I hate wet mouth sounds.
I'm sorry. So I did my internship at a place called Navos, and at Navos it was a very storied place, and so I had to write a history of it, and we had to interview people who worked there. So I decided to pull a Pursuit of Happiness, and I just went straight to the top and interviewed the CEO.
Wow.
And then interviewed a couple other therapists and got an experience of what it's like to work there, what the history of that place has been, what the goals are, what the goals are not, how they're doing, how they feel they're doing, and then use that as well as my own experience in my office and the experience of people walking in. And I thought it was a good paper. I got an A on it.
I'd never had to explore that kind of the experiential influence of an office. That would have been really interesting. We did talk a bit about in my school. We talked about power dynamics in the room itself, not necessarily like, am I nervous coming in or is it comfortable in the room? Well, we did talk about comfort, but in terms of like the approach, we didn't talk about that. It was actually when they were sitting in the room, are the chairs angled instead of face on, because that's kind of confrontational. And you can angle them so you're both naturally looking away from each other, and then having the client have access to the door before you. Especially if you're working with trauma, there was something about if the therapist is between the client and the exit, that could be troublesome. So stuff like that. We talked about like the dynamics of the room, but like the emotional experience of the client would be very interesting. Again, difference between our education.
Yeah, yeah. I never once had a how to set the room up conversation, and in fact, I can think of certainly the therapists that I have seen. I've had to walk past them to get to the door. Not always, but my old office, I had two doors, two ways in. So there was an outside entrance and a hallway entrance, and so you could come and go either way. And it was nice because it meant that you could, no matter if someone came in one way, you could go out the other. So
Yeah,
it was good.
That is good. There's a safety aspect to therapy, because you do work with people who can be dangerous. Now we're treading a fine line here, because mental health does not mean that someone is dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
but it also means that you're dealing with people who may not have a correct perception of reality, as the nature of therapy.
I think it's also worth pointing out that you and I, Pete, are both men. And I certainly know my fair share of female therapists who have absolutely had very scary things happen in the room. So it's not a guarantee you'll be safe, but that's, I guess, true of anywhere, honestly.
Yes. And we're in the wake of, what was this, on the 19th, so that was 5 days ago, Rebecca White was just killed in Florida by one of her clients. So that's kind of on the mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Not saying that
Not
that is
good.
the norm, but in terms of setting up your office, I personally like having the exit accessible to the client as well. Having two exits is even better, like when you said that.
It was pretty nice. Curse them for what they did. What they did. They just didn't do anything wrong. Just turns out the new ownership sucks.
I see. For your office. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for your loss, Taylor. That was, Taylor he was basically pushed out of his old office.
I'll be generous, since I wasn't pushed out so much as I refused to do business with bullies and liars.
So as you can't fire me, I quit, kind of thing.
No, they weren't gonna. They wanted my money. They were happy to take my money. I just wasn't happy to give it to them because I don't do well with bullies and liars, and that's, as it turns out, who the company was being transferred ownership to.
Do you think this is? Do you think any part of this experience you had was unique to being a therapist? It would be useful for someone going into therapy to navigate that type of situation, or do you think it would be kind of ubiquitous among all business owners?
I feel like it's probably ubiquitous among all business owners. I think going into private practice by yourself is perhaps a different thing. Maybe we can talk about what it takes to build a business as we talk about this today, but certainly part of it is finding an office for yourself, which means dealing with leasing, which means dealing with contract negotiation, which means dealing with ownership. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into running a business that is not necessarily unique to therapists, but we can absolutely talk about the specific business aspects to be considered when you are a therapist in private practice, as opposed to working in community mental health or a group practice.
Yeah. Building a business is really important. After, of course, if you choose whether or not to do community mental health, like we talked about last time, you pay your dues and get the real baseline experience that a lot of therapists need.
Yes, I will say some people do really enjoy community mental health, and I don't want to badmouth.
Some people thrive in that.
Yeah, and more power to them, and they're not all monsters. My experience has been the bosses tend to be not fun to deal with.
Yeah, there was one therapist I remember there at Quality Behavioral Health in Clarkston, Washington, and her name, and well, I shouldn't say her name, so I just named the agency, but she had been there for a long, long time, and she led groups, and she managed children so well. She was just such a fun person, and it seemed like the chaos of community mental health just kind of rolled off her back. She and I spent many hours in cars talking about her experiences in the past and how to become a group therapist for children. and she was very helpful to me. But she just, it wasn't so much that she thrived in chaos. It was like chaos didn't matter to her. For some reason, she became an institution there, and the management just kind of left her alone.
Mm.
Whereas the newbies like me, I think they felt the need to correct quite often. But
Mm.
she was awesome. So I think
Yeah.
community mental health, you can't, if you find your niche like she did with child groups, you find something else that you like, you can love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to say, like Janine Candelot worked in community mental health. She retired from Wasatch Mental Health, where she worked the whole time. She was amazing. My supervisor in my practicum was amazing. There are some really, really great people who work in community mental health. I am just not one of them.
Well, we in what else can you do as a therapist? And Taylor is educated as a counselor, as a mental health counselor, and I am educated as a social worker, and I chose to become a licensed clinical social worker. So to go into mental health specifically. But what else can you do in terms of these degrees? I'll speak in terms of me as a social worker first. Social work is so eclectic to where you're basically you become an expert in managing systems, bureaucracy, resources, and that turns into case management. So working in CPS is a really famous example, helping families navigate a bureaucracy. There's often stigma about what social workers do to families, but if you could see, and me seeing where these kids are taken from, and the families that are affected by social workers, you would take them to.
Yeah,
That's my rebuttal for social work.
yeah. And it doesn't happen as often as people think. Like I know a lot of people, like, you can't call CPS, they'll take my kids. Well, it doesn't quite work that way.
No.
There's a lot of steps to have to go through. And I have not seen a ton of children taken out of homes. I don't think I've actually ever seen any children taken out of a home because of a CPS call.
And it's funded by the state too, and the state does not want to spend money that they don't have to. They will strive to keep the kids in the home. Like they really, really don't want the kids to go into foster care. It's not like this slippery slope, 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. It's like the state, you have to people have to make a case for why do we need to get this kid into foster care. So it's not as scary as people think. And I've heard experiences. It's funny. Maybe this contradicts what I just said about you would take them too. But social workers who have rescued, as I would say, children from these experiences, still the neighbors come out and will spit on them and yell at them and what are you doing? Because they just don't know the context of what these kids are going through. Mm-hmm. And so they just get this bad rap of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this to Rosie. You're taking her kids. And I was like, wow, you guys really don't know Rosie at all. But
yeah. And usually the goal is to get them with family too. It's not that they take them and put them in like a police car and they go live in a police station or whatever. Like the goal is always family first and then foster care.
Yeah, the kids don't go into like an ice holding cell. But anyway, that's one thing. I kind of go on a tangent because CPS is the maybe the hot button topic when it comes to other jobs in social work is CPS.
The redheaded stepchild of social work.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of general social work practice, your job is to manage cases. What can you do to help a person, help a family, help a community even? There was one lady who was in my cohort at University of Wyoming, loved policy. She loved policy. And she would go and protest. She would write her congressman. She was vying for a not an upfront political position, but basically an aide once she graduated to go work on Capitol Hill because she loved policy, felt like that's the way you affect change. And she got her degree in social work and went on to work at, I think she worked as an aide, but you do that with social work. And that's a credible in to establishing yourself in politics, is starting with policy. So that's
you can also do nonprofit work. A lot of folks I know with social work degrees go into nonprofit advocacy programs and positions where they try and get more funding. They try and find ways to get services to people that is not clinical. I know that like people with social work degrees can also work in emergency rooms as a clinical social worker.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's right.
They help navigate that.
When I was working in a hospital, I did rotations through the 3rd floor, which was like inpatient psychiatric work. And that is really hard because you have people coming in when they're drunk or high and they're having a psychotic episode, and the cops just have to take them to the hospital to keep them safe. So they're there for like 3 days is the average. You're on the psych ward for 3 days just to stabilize, and then you come up with a plan. I did a rotation in the emergency room and social work in an emergency room. If you, if you're good at it, it's this morbid fun. Like, I don't know if you're allowed to say it's fun, but like I would say that emergency room nurses stay there for a long time, and emergency room docs, because it is so important. You see the benefit of what you're doing immediately. It's just this: if this person doesn't get warm, they're going to die. Well, they live in the woods. They're homeless. And so they're like, social worker, take care of this guy. And we don't have a lot of options, but they can't go back out and live in the woods in Wyoming because they'll die. So that kind of thing. Managing cases that are life or death in the emergency room can be fun, dare I say it.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's social work. Social work is cases. Like, you're working cases, you're working within systems. It's case management in different ways. So that's social work.
And that's very transferable too. Like, if you want to get out of the mental health world, technically you have a lot of training in how to navigate systems. So there is benefit outside of that. You kind of have to sell yourself to make the jump, but it is possible to make that jump. So,
or get a PhD and get out of it completely.
Yeah, I said Pete.
Go into research.
In terms of having like a non-social work degree, your options are a little bit more limited. I know people who from my cohort who went into HR, and they use that to bounce into getting an MBA.
Interesting.
You can, basically, if you have a master's degree in psychology, you understand people and what motivates people and how they interact with the world around them. And so that is a pretty transferable skill, especially if you can sell it the right way, you know?
Yeah. That is interesting. What's your take on using psychology to become a consultant? Like, some talking heads in media where they use their expertise to then become like an opinionated commentator.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of talking heads in general. Not the band. The band is fantastic. I'm talking the career. Yeah, no, David Byrne's amazing. I don't know. This is maybe going to sound a little hypocritical, but I have a hard time with people who say, I'm an expert at this, you should listen to what I'm saying. Because I tend to be very distrusting of people who are trying to flaunt power.
It sounds a lot like I have this problem. Like, if I see someone who's a billionaire, I immediately distrust them. Someone who's uber rich, I'm like, oh really? What are you doing with your money? It's just this natural feeling of like, you're not like me kind of thing. You don't know me kind of thing. And I know that's not fair. Being rich isn't a sin, and they're not a bad person for, being rich. It's not them.
There's a line, I think.
Being rich isn't a personality characteristic.
Are we talking about billionaires or millionaires? I think if you have millions of dollars, I can see you not necessarily being a bad person. If you have, like, I don't know, say $72 billion, there's probably something wrong with you.
Really? I think most of their assets, most of that money that we hear, that single number is tied up in the assets of their business.
It's not unrealized gains.
Yeah, it's just, if they're going to sell everything they own and liquidate everything, they'd have $72 billion. But otherwise, it's all churning in this huge machine of ownership that they're like, well, I'm worth that much, but I'm in assets that I could burn. Maybe I could come up with $1 billion.
No, I agree with that. I think there comes a point though where, like, why do you need to keep making that much? What are you trying to grow into? Where, like, if your company is worth, and you're like the main shareholder, again, $72 billion, and you never have to worry about money again. You've already earned the last dollar you'll ever spend 15 times over, right? Why do you need to keep making more? Why do you need to keep growing?
Those are personality characteristics, what you're talking about. The money itself is not. If somebody's born into old money and like they're a Vanderbilt and they never worry about money, I don't know them from Adam. Live like on the street, and it's not that they're over ambitious, which is a personality trait, and it's not that they are selfish, which is a personality trait, or it's not that they're philanthropic, which is a personality trait. They just have money. It just is. So I don't know it without knowing the person. I just look at the money and I say, oh, it's money. But anyway, when it comes to, we kind of compared having money with having expertise. When somebody has a degree it's interesting because if you are out of the field and you are not practicing, it is a perishable skill, I believe. I've been
Hmm.
out of clinical work for about a year, and I'm surprised at how when I went and taught a seminar, and I was like, shoot, I had this scheme that I bring up and I teach people about. So without practicing those things clinically, you do lose it. It's not like riding a
I
bicycle.
kind of disagree with that a little bit. I think having the recall of a specific intervention is one thing, but I think your natural clinical intuition has certainly not dulled at all.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, then it's a person. You're talking about personality traits again. That being a
Yeah.
therapist, then being a therapist doesn't change. You are able to sit in a space and hold it and like investigate and be curious and be positive and optimistic. Those are things that like affect your therapy. But I guess you're right in terms of like, shoot, where's that handout that I used to give to people?
Yeah.
That's the thing that becomes perishable. But
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
any case, if you're becoming a talking head and you're now an expert and you say, I'm an expert, listen to me, there's that natural of, oh, you have more than me. That's interesting. And if they're become a talking head, are they still clinical experts? Are
Yeah.
you an expert in human behavior because you've been talking about it for the last 10 years?
It's a hard thing, right? I mean, like, again, acknowledging the hypocrisy of like, I'm recording myself talking about a thing that I think I
didn't
think I'm
think
an
about
expert
that.
at
Yeah.
being a therapist. Like, I have to own that. But I also think that I'm not telling other people who don't think the same thing as me that they're wrong. Maybe that's, well, I think of a talking head. Like, I think about like the idiots on the cable news channels, pick your flavor. They're all the same kind of like, well, I have this opinion, therefore I'm right, blah, 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 blah. Well, are you? Are you really?
Yeah.
Why are you an expert in this? What gives your opinion, not your collection of facts, but your opinion about the facts? Why is your opinion worth more? And this is where you get into the money thing again, is like, it's hard not to be political about billionaires, but freaking the way that billionaires are controlling elections, the way that billionaires are controlling policy that gets advocated for. And I mean, Elon Musk, what a nightmare. What a nightmare to be able to buy a presidential election. Bah, bah.
Okay, that's a stretch, Taylor. Buying a presidential election.
Yes,
But we're
I
not
think
going.
Elon Musk would say himself that he bought the election.
Huh.
The
Well,
contributions, the idea of money being a free speech. I mean, there's all of this. This is
yeah.
where being a billionaire becomes super problematic to me.
Treating corporations like individuals, I do not agree with. Um, but what actually happened, I don't know. I don't know. And I would think it would be a far stretch to say something like that happened. But we're not talking about politics here. We're talking about being a therapist. How did we get there? Holy cow.
We can keep talking politics if you want, Pete.
Yeah. How do I say this? Being a financial conservative means,
Mm-hmm.
for me, means that the government kind of leaves me alone. I want the government to need less money. I want it to
Mm-hmm.
need less money. But being a social liberal means that you have to facilitate certain things. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
often teeter-tottering between helping people, which requires money, and leaving people alone, which means smaller government. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question of what obligation we have to each other as people, right? Do I have an obligation to help because I can? Uh, as a My personal viewpoint is, if you can help, you have an obligation to help. That's I understand and recognize that's a personal opinion, right? But I
so with
do
great
think that
power comes great responsibility. Wouldn't you believe?
Spider-Man's uncle had that locked down for realsies. But I mean, like, what do, Pete? We take our hands and we stick them in the muck of humanity professionally. We don't do it for fun. We enjoy the work, but it's not that we one day was like, it'd be really great is like just holding trauma for other people. That's not why we did it. We did it because we can help and we're good at it. So we should probably be helping. So if
And you
I have
can
the
do that.
capacity to help,
Yeah.
good.
And I do see, in defense of billionaires, recently, Miss Haslam from Tennessee passed away, and she was a great philanthropist for Tennessee. Her husband started the Pilot Company, which has the Flying J gas stations across the country. So they are
Mm-hmm.
in like the top 20 families of the U.S., like of
Mm-hmm.
of rich. and
Yeah.
their two sons own sports teams and own museums and stuff like that. So my first inclination was, why are we celebrating this person? How is she better than anyone else? And I have this natural like demand resistance. Like, I'm not going to worship her just because she's rich. And I went into and I saw what she had done, and she supported the Knoxville Symphony. She actually uh, was a huge philanthropist into the University of Tennessee, with the music school being named after her. And they basically, in their old age, just poured money into East Tennessee, into Tennessee, and
Hmm.
they just seemed like naturally generous people, billionaires who supported, I forget what it was, museums and symphonies and everything, just pouring money into this just because they could. And I left reading her bio as like, wow, I am a douchebag. I'm a jerk for thinking that about her just because they there was this obituary of how great she was, and my first inclination, oh really, just because she's rich? I'm like, no, she legitimately was a generous person, and that's why she was celebrated.
I think that is a very fair counterpoint to what I've been saying. I don't think that having money means you're selfish. I guess when I think of billionaires, I think of the ones who are front and center, like the Bezoses of the world, the Musks of the world, where I'm like, I don't know that you're actually contributing a whole lot. You have businesses that are paying for people to live, sure, but then you're taking so much on the top of that. We've got all these questions about human rights issues, like don't stop to go to the bathroom if you're working at the Amazon warehouse, as an example. That's why. What is the purpose of that kind of productivity? What does it really bring into the world? And there's the hypocrisy of all of us who have Amazon Prime accounts that I have to name as well. And, to your point, there are people who don't go into the limelight, who just give so much. I mean, there are these people here in Austin who just gave $100 million to build up the hospital system here because they want to be a world-class hospital system that people come to.
Wow.
And they want that because they had a friend who had a medical condition. They're like, okay, well, the closest hospital that works with this is Houston. Like, why? That's ridiculous. The capital of Texas doesn't have a hospital capable of working with this. We're changing that. That's a gift. There's no two ways about it. What a gift.
Hmm.
So you're right. You have a very fair point with that.
In terms of expertise, then we have seen both sides of the spectrum with um, psychologists who will flaunt their knowledge as if it were owed them or something.
Spicy take. Jordan Peterson's a piece of garbage. Keep going.
I appreciate his oh shoot, I listened to him for quite a while, and his authoritarianism is, or not authoritarianism, but his authority, the way he speaks, of like, wow, okay, you take that and you walk with it as like, wow, he knows what he's talking about. You naturally believe that. Whether or not he's right is up for debate, but it seemed like some of the things he said make sense to me in terms of Jordan Peterson. When it, but expertise is like an asset, and
Yeah.
so I forgot where I was going with that. You can cut all this.
No, they're going to keep this. You know why, Pete? We're actually having disagreement and you're pushing back. Not that you didn't before, but like,
I'm trying. I'm trying to do better. Okay.
Yeah, well, you weren't doing poorly before. I think what's interesting about this is we're talking about what it takes to be a therapist, right? And it's devolving into things. These are all considerations. When people come into your office, I, as somebody who is politically more liberal than not, I have people who come in who are very not liberal. They're very conservative. And I have to see and understand their point of view. This is a huge part of being a therapist. Pete does not agree with me. I don't agree with Pete on this. But if I was Pete's client, I would need him to understand why I'm thinking the way I do. And he would have to interact with me based on my understanding to move me to a different understanding. And if Pete was my client, I would have to understand his why and interact with that and navigate that. The capacity to be a therapist is directly related to your capacity to understand people you don't agree with and to act like they have a
Yes.
point.
Yeah, and believe their point. Maybe not just act like they have a point, but you can say, "Wow, I see where your beliefs stemmed from. You grew up in
Mm-hmm.
poverty and you were relying on help, and now you believe these things. I totally understand." And you have to come in touch with your own biases, where how you grew up and where
Mm-hmm.
your beliefs came from and why you believe what you do, which takes a lot of self exploration before you even become a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And
And you got to sit and hear some of this stuff and not get mad. Like I know people who
Yeah.
could not have the conversation that Pete and I just had about billionaires without getting really angry. And I think that's a shame because I think that these kind of conversations are necessary. But if you, again, we talked about passion not being rightness. Like if
Oh,
you
being
assume
loud
because
doesn't
you're
make you right. Yeah.
exactly, this is a great conversation or a great example of a kind of conversation therapists need to have without getting loud. Because if I have someone coming to my office who feels very strongly about something that I disagree with, I'm going to lose them as a client if I can't connect with that. And it's not about if I can make money so much as it's about can I offer them something that helps their lives be better. That is something that I have to be willing to enter into. I have to be willing to hold their point of view and consider it as valid. I cannot just be de facto right because then I lose my capacity to help.
There was a philosopher I listened to recently who was giving some presentation, but uh, he was challenged by a listener because he was browbeating everybody into submission of agreement. He would basically say things over and over and louder, and if anyone spoke, he would speak over them. And dang, I wish I remembered his name, but it was just so unpleasant. I listened to about 10 minutes of it, and I'm like,
Is that
he may
Jordan
have
Peterson by any chance?
no, 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 it wasn't him. No, it wasn't him. But it was this feeling of like, we're not having a discussion. We're not exploring anything. You're just announcing things to me or at me.
Yeah.
That is a lot in the day in the life of a therapist, whether you're in community mental health or private practice. It's constantly like recognizing your biases, exploring their information, and that's kind of the baseline of like getting to know somebody. And you're like, wow, I understand you as a person. Okay, now why do these intrusive thoughts bother you so much? You know what? You just told me about when you were growing up. This one show, your mom came and turned it off suddenly and said that's inappropriate. And you're like, wow, so that kind of formed your understanding of what these relationships are like, and they're inappropriate or they're bad or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Not to say that the entire time is you sitting in like discomfort, going like, "Oh, I can't believe he's saying that." Ah! It's more a matter of curiosity is the name of the game, and in order to be truly curious, you need to set aside the idea that you're right.
Which is hard because now here we are trying to manage this feeling that we're experts. We have to help them come towards a different understanding, which is a critique of cognitive behavioral therapy, that the way they are thinking is wrong. And so there's this contradiction in therapy where it's like, okay, I see the error in your thought. Well, how do you call that an error if you understand where it's coming from? You understand why they think that way, where that bias comes from, or how that warped sense of reality, where it's founded, and you're like, that totally makes sense. So how do you call it wrong if it makes sense? Well, it's because it's not helping your life. Like, I understand
Yeah.
you think everyone, like this thought, everyone is out to get me. Everyone is always out to get me. Everybody? Let's challenge that thought. Everybody is out to get me. Everybody.
Mm-hmm. At some point, it stops being a question of right and wrong and becomes a question of effective versus ineffective.
Yes, exactly.
You have a goal. Are you working towards that goal? Are you not working towards that goal? How can we help you work more towards it?
And as a caring therapist, you can say, wow, that totally makes sense. How is that working for you? Is that working in your life? But you can keep it if you want. I don't care, but it just seems like it's not working, that kind of thing. And that type of realization and having people hear their thoughts said back to them always helps.
Yes.
It's a big value of therapy.
Yeah, when things exist in the vacuum of your brain, they become really big, but when they say them out loud, they kind of shrink down to a more manageable thing.
I can't tell you how many times I have repeated almost word for word something someone just said to me and they disagree with it.
Yep.
I'm like, okay. And I don't bring it back. I don't say, you see what you just did there? Like I just repeated what you said. I could have done that, but I'm like, okay. And we run with the disagreement. And then you have to build on that. Like, okay, so that's not true. Knowing in the back of my head was like, that's what you just said. But that's a really productive contradiction that sometimes happens.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of brings up to me the conversation we had about dogmatism. I think about this from time to time, Pete, how you said, having to question everything sounds like it's the basis for ineffective living. But this is what we're talking about, like the ability to question everything without having to throw it away. Real, honest to goodness curiosity, you know?
Yes, curiosity. And yeah, getting to a place where you can accept the ridiculous. And you're like, I know that I'm believing this. I know that it's based on these things that happened in my life. and I don't care. That's the way I am, and I accept it. Okay, well then we're done. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
And as a
Don't tell me you want to
therapist,
change then.
as
Just,
a therapist
you know,
who's like loaded with quote expertise and feeling like, oh, I have to fix it. If you come at a client that way, then then you're not in a place of acceptance. And they say, I know it's ridiculous. I know not everyone is out to get me, but I've managed the anxiety that comes from that. Whatever. It's just something that I think. Okay. And
Yeah.
with this mantle of professional expertise that you've put on yourself, you can just say, okay, they're the expert. They said it's fine. We're done. Like that's
Yeah.
it. You don't feel the need to fix it. So that's a little bit that's a little bit of what happens in
All
therapy.
of this to say,
Yeah, all this to say, I want to move on to the next point of like a day in the life of community mental health and private practice. Like, what does it look like you going to work? And I think at this point, you know better than I do because I'm in school. I can say what happened to me in the past, but I think this is kind of your thing. What does a day in the life look like for you in your private practice?
every morning I wake up and stretch and think how beautiful it is to be me. And then I have a gratitude journal I write in for 15 minutes. And then I do 5 push-ups and thank the goodness of the universe that I'm me.
Oh, you wake up at 5:00, right?
That's right. And I do 15 push-ups again. And then I make sure to silently judge all my friends on Instagram.
No, wow. So you going to Instagram as part of your millionaire plan, 5-year plan?
That's right. That's right. Honestly, for me, a day in my life as a therapist is I wake up, I get ready for the day, and I go to work. There's not a lot of magic secret sauce to it. I know that my day operates in 50-minute chunks with a 10-minute grace period. And so I look at my day and I go, okay, here's what I have coming up. And I do like a quick, not even a full rundown. I just go, okay, this person, we're probably talking about this. Let me get ready for it. For me, getting ready is just reminding myself what we were talking about before, the greater context of their life. It's like a 2-second thought process. For me, the real work is sitting with them and just that curiosity of like, what are we talking about today? I'm going to ask them questions about it. And I just have cool conversations all day long. I don't want to be flippant about it, but like really that's what I do. I sit down with the person, they talk about what's on their mind, I ask them questions and I point out patterns. And that's basically it. I have a 2-hour lunch in the middle of the day. I have 3 clients, 2 hours, 3 clients, and then I'm done. And that's kind of my day. Note taking is supposed to exist somewhere in there. I'm terrible at note taking.
How do you keep
part
your
of that,
notes? Are they online?
Extremely minimal. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
they're online. Honestly, and I'm going to probably get some real pushback on this one. I imagine from you, especially Pete. My notes are usually 2 sentences, and they're the same 2 sentences for every session I have.
Oh, Taylor, it's almost useless.
Yep. You know why I do that though?
Why?
Because if anything ever goes to court, they can't use it to justify anything. If I have a divorce thing that comes through, the note says they're processing the separation from their wife. What does that mean? And what do they say? I'm not giving them any ammo.
I can see that.
Plus, I don't have any kind of insurance oversight. I don't work with any insurance companies, so I don't need to justify. Yeah, which is great.
Sometimes my clients want their records, and so actually you have to keep records for 7 years or so. I decide because of taxes, so I decide I keep them for 7 years. And a couple times patients have requested their records, and I feel like it's a I don't know. I guess I could justify it the way you did, but I always felt like it was a professional courtesy to give them a rundown of each session.
That's fair. I have had clients ask for notes, and I tell them before. I usually say, "Hey, just so you know, my note taking process is super minimal."
So I've heard that before, though. To CYA for court, you just write very, very little.
Yeah, and again, I don't have to justify it to anybody. Like, no, I'm not going to get audited by any insurance companies, and that's for me why you really want it. And if you're also transferring between people within the agency, you want to have good notes.
Also, I have a horrible working memory, and so my before a client will show up at the beginning of the day, I will review my last note because we'll talk about what we'll talk about next time. And so I want to pick up where we left off and say, wow, we were talking about this conversation. It was productive or it wasn't. I need to know that. It's not just for them, but I need to know it. Um,
That might be a difference
yeah.
between you and I in that I have a really, really good memory. I can't remember names to save my life, but like I've had clients reach out to me for after like 7 years. Hey man, don't know if you remember me. Curious if you're still taking clients. I say, oh yeah, and then I'll ask them about the last thing we talked about because it just pops up in my head. And they
Wow.
had do you look that up? I said no, I just remember, and that's I think maybe a big difference. Is like I don't
Yeah.
have that issue.
Yeah. I need that. So finding your way to work around that. I did enjoy not working with insurance. It was like my sessions were not ever audited. So
Mm-hmm.
I had the records were between me, the client, and my filing cabinet. And I would just
Mm-hmm.
type it up, print it off, and slide it into a filing cabinet. And that was it.
Yeah. I will say there are things that I break for, right? Like if someone comes into my office and they're having suicidal thoughts, those definitely get noted and paid attention
Oh,
to.
okay. Yeah. Well, safety
And
plans, I would make a copy of a safety plan and put it in their file as well.
sure. And I've had clients who have needed me to submit things to like, FMLA type stuff, Family
Hmm.
Medical Leave Act type things. And so I'll do super in depth with that. And that I don't have a problem with.
Do you use a medical note software that encrypts it somehow, or do you type it out and then print it off like I did, or what?
All my notes are online with Simple Practice, so it's under an encrypted. It's an
Oh,
electronic
okay.
medical health record thing,
Yes, it has
EMHR.
to be encrypted as a medical record. My filing cabinet was locked twice,
Yeah,
two locks. Because
good
the
old
I think
analog encryption.
yeah, the rule has to be behind two blocks.
Yeah,
Anyway, that's note taking.
yeah. So that's
Um,
my day. Like I wake up, I go to work, and I'm done, and I love it.
that is nice. I
Community mental
remember.
health is not that.
No, community mental health. I felt like was a lot more like the military. I got up early because I don't know why, but I was fueled by anxiety. I think it was because my supervisors were harsh, and so
Mm-hmm.
um, getting to business on time and making sure they saw me early. Like I wanted that to happen. That was kind of a holdover
Mm-hmm.
from the military. Um, yeah, man, community mental health was just so. Oh man, it was so hard. Um, that's one I got fired from was community mental health.
Mm.
Um, but I don't regret it, honestly. Now that I look back on it, um, coming out of the first time I've ever gotten fired from a job ever
Mm-hmm.
was uh, community mental health. And looking back, I was like, man, it was just so bad, and yet I was so stoked about I'll make a career out of this. I'll progress. I'll just do the best I can, and that progression was seen as inside of that agency. I'll just progress and I'll become a supervisor and whatever in 10 years. And once I was out of it, I was like, man, that was kind of a dead end thing. They for instance, they did not encourage me to get my own license. I had a agency affiliated license, which means I was under the agency, and
Mm.
I didn't know about getting hours towards my own licensure. So I'd worked
Oh.
for a year or so, and then realized, wow, I don't know even know how many hours of practice I have because they're not really pushing me towards my own independent licensure. So it was kind of like a don't worry, we'll take care of you kind of thing. And then once I was fired, I was out in the cold. I was just like I had to find my records of my hours and then get them signed off, and I progressed that way. But like it was a lot of don't worry, we'll take care of you, and then like out in the cold.
That's rough. I feel like that's pretty typical of community mental health, which is why a lot of clinicians who I know who have left it will never go back because it's just such a self perpetuating system of garbage.
Yep.
It's a real problem. I
Um,
feel like community mental health, the number of people you see is way higher. There's a lot of quotas. The pay, there's just no money there, which makes everybody really stressed all the time, which is a shame because the people who need it the most are going to community mental health organizations.
mhm. I still hold that it is a good experience for anybody. I
Yes.
had a year and a half there, and I became a like I said, a disaster or a DCR.
Crisis response.
Yeah, disaster. Yeah,
Designated.
designated crisis responder. I can't believe I forgot my own acronym. Designated crisis responder for Washington State, and our agency was contracted through the state to do that for the police. And it was such an interesting experience. I came in contact with my the first time someone was urgently suicidal and did not want help. Usually people come and they're like, I'm having suicidal thoughts, and if you're in private practice, you're working with them on that. But this one was like, you're called because her daughter called the police, and you go there. And I remember in school, one of the teachers said, and this stuck with me, if someone is suicidal, silence is a red flag. And I just remember,
Mm-hmm.
okay, got it. Silence is a red flag. And when I went out to those, she was sitting on the steps smoking. And I was like, hey, your daughter called. I'm the DCR. I just want to make sure you're doing okay. And she just keeps smoking. And I was like, do you have a gun in the home? And she just kept smoking. And I'm like, well, we got to make sure you're safe. And she gets up, she grabs her box of cigarettes, and she just leaves. She walks down the street. And these two cops were standing there on the fence. And I was like, we need to get her. Like, this is not cool. And the daughter came out of the house. It turns out the lady, I called the police station later to figure out like what happened, because I want to validate my own impressions. She had gone to a store, I think it was a Walmart, and went into the dressing room and was making suicidal comments through the door. And the police followed her and followed her to the Walmart, went to the dressing room and were like, ma'am, and she was just saying suicidal things through the door, so they had to open the door. But in a strange turn of events, I felt validated. I felt good that they helped her, they saved her, she's still alive, and that my impressions were correct. But but that came as a course of community mental health. That was like people who need it the most, and they need it urgently. That's community mental health. So even if you dip your toe into it, it gives you so much. Taking walks with someone who is actively on meth and hallucinating, and you're trying to like manage the hallucinations. That was, oh my goodness, that is an experience. You don't get that in private practice.
No, I have had people come into my office who are drunk. I've had people come into my office who are high, but like weed high, not like cocaine high.
Oh yeah.
So it still happens, and I've had people in private practice who were addicted and actively using heroin. But they, generally speaking, weren't coming in and like passing out in my office.
Okay, I was going to ask, were they semi sober when they came to your office?
Yeah, semi.
Okay. Oh, yeah. It's hard to validate the need for community mental health at the same time telling you how hard it is. Say this is so hard. Everyone should do it.
Yeah, it's like one of the best things I never want to do ever again.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. So much fun I never want to have again. Never.
Yeah. So we were going to talk about the business side of this, but I think we've kind of agreed in our little side note section that might be an entire episode by itself, how to run a business as a therapist.
Yeah. I had an LLC for a while, and now Taylor right now has his own private practice, but his dad also helped him build it legitimately. I had to pay a lawyer. So
yeah, I did not have to pay a lawyer. That's true. I did have to pay the fees, like the legal filing fees that are required by the state with the
I was going to say, like,
stuff.
Your dad was like, that'll be $700.
I offered to pay him because I was like, Dad, you're doing me a service. I'd like to pay you. He's like, what's the point of being a lawyer if you can't help your kids? And I went, okay.
Oh, that's great.
If you insist.
Expertise for the common man.
Yes. But we'll go down that road in a different episode in the future. There is a question that I'm very interested in that it will probably be the last one that we have today. And it said, what is your worst and best experience of being a therapist? And that's such an interesting thing. One, because HIPAA prevents us from talking too much about some of the specifics.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, what is your worst experience as a therapist, Pete?
My worst experience. I don't, when you say that way, it makes it sound like what's the single hardest thing that ever happened. And really it may not be the single hardest thing. It is probably a long line of moderately difficult things that I didn't have the space to process. Mm-hmm. And that sounds smarmy. It sounds really abstract when I say you don't have space to process. Like, what does that mean? Space.
And meanwhile, you say that, I'm like, dude, I fully understand.
Exactly. Yeah, you understand that. When I hear people say like, "Oh, I just, I need time to process that," it's not.
It's not a weakness.
It's not a weakness. It's not even guys who claim to be so stoic that they don't need anybody. They process things in their own way. which means that you mull it over. It's not intrusive thinking. It's not the thoughts that poke themselves into your conscience that you didn't want there. It's the thinking you do when you want to think about something. You want to think about something intensely, and so you spend the time thinking it over again and again and again. And when you don't have that time to think something over again and again and again to figure it out, it builds. And so I think my hardest
That
experience.
is beautifully said.
Thank you. When my hardest experience was not beautiful, it was probably when I was in community mental health, or no, it probably would be one of my assignments in the military, giving therapy. As a therapist, dealing with the most horrible trauma and people who were naturally innocent personas, like female police officer who grew up in a small town, and her first job ever was managing refugees coming out of Afghanistan in Ramstein. Different
Hmm.
culture. She was told not to intervene in their culture. She was not allowed to wear her weapon when she was inside the wire with these hundreds and hundreds of refugees. They did not respect women. They didn't know why a woman would be guarding them. She witnessed abuse of women. She witnessed abuse of children. She was not able to intervene, so she was having nightmares of this abuse she witnessed. And then she was accosted by three men who were yelling at her in
Hmm.
whatever language, and she was terrified. You can imagine this 19-year-old kid coming out of high school, going through how many weeks of training in the military, and then being plopped down with these grown men. And if you don't have the natural, if you have a naturally um, kind persona, I don't know if that's
Mm-hmm.
weakness, but I don't know how to put this. She she was terrified. She was really really scared. And then I had another client at the time who was an army member, and he was having nightmares of his deployment, and he would tell me stories that I of men disappearing right in front of him, just
Hmm.
disappearing, gone, out of existence. And he and his wife, of course, as naturally goes through, their relationship was not doing well because he was thinking in extremes, and he was often terrified of really small things that she didn't understand. And at the same time, I was running a group for trauma. So each one of my seven
Jeez.
members of this group each had their own type of trauma. And they were either engaged in the group and they were succeeding, or they weren't and they were blaming it on me. So there was this one point where I'd go from client to client, and I had more trauma clients, but I'd go from one to the other, and and then I'd go home, and my kids would need me, and I just couldn't. Nobody understands the stuff I'm going through, and I can't tell them the horrors that I'm experiencing with these people who live it. And I think it came to a head when I actually sent you a video message, and I just needed to talk about it. I had to talk about something. I just felt like I was about to burst or desert, or I wasn't going to be able to do my job anymore because I couldn't handle all of the pain that everybody felt all around me, and they needed me. Oh man,
Hmm.
it was very hard, very hard, and those people needed more help than I could give them, and
Yeah.
I felt like you feel like it's your fault. I know it's not, but it still feels like they need to meet with me more than once every 3 weeks. I couldn't meet with them except once every 3 weeks because I was so full. They just kept loading me up with patients. So I was seeing these trauma people who needed once, maybe twice a week, and I was seeing them once every 3 weeks. It was
Yeah.
infuriating. I couldn't help them.
Yeah. And I'm it's interesting to hear you talk about this stuff because I had an answer for my worst experience. And I'm as you're talking, I'm like, it's basically exactly the same. You know, the moments when I've thought I can't do this anymore are the moments where it's been, you know, just like a week straight of every time I think within a 1 week period I heard the three or four worst things I'd ever heard in my life. And they were all very different kinds of the worst thing, like abuse, trauma, watching a murder take place in their home against family members, stuff like that. And when it comes at you that fast, it can be really hard to to know what to do with it. And I'm
Yeah.
naturally a very solitary person, and I'm grateful for Pete. I'm grateful for other friends I have I can talk to, but it's really hard for me to talk to other people sometimes. And not because I'm trying to be stoic. I just like, I don't know. It's a thing I've struggled with. I think I've gotten better with in my old age, but I do remember when you sent me that video thing on Marco Polo. I think you were in your car and you just started
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
And there have been, yeah, thankfully for me, because you felt comfortable reaching out to me, there have been times I felt comfortable reaching out to you that I would not have felt comfortable reaching out. Uh, I'll tell you what, man, the way you get through being a therapist, it's a very lonely profession if you do it, especially in private practice. Like there's nobody else there. And so
Yes.
having that kind of community is how you get through these hard parts. But like I think about the worst things I've been through have been, you'd think that I'd say at the time, I had someone come in my office with a bag of pills and a razor blade, and she's like, I'm going to kill myself. That is not one of my worst times as a therapist. In fact, that turned into one of the most important and best experiences of my career because we got her out of there and a lot of her life changed as a result of that moment. That's not the bad stuff. The bad stuff is just the constant, I cannot do what I need to do to make any kind of effective change because this is outside of my power. The learning to deal with helplessness as a
Yes. Yeah,
therapist
that's
is
it.
crucial.
Is this sadness and also helplessness. Like life is terrible and you can't do anything about it. And you feel
Mm-hmm.
like that for a sustained period of time. It just is horrible.
And then you start feeling guilty because your personal life isn't terrible. You know,
Yes.
like
Oh man.
I'd go home and like,
Oh.
there's my wife and there's my kid, and I'm not worried about eating. There's food in the fridge, and
Yep.
it
And
starts to feel kind of bad.
I'm a good father, and you feel bad that like that person didn't have a good father. I
Mm-hmm.
remember hearing like you had 3 bad stories. I remember having multiple bad stories in a week, and wondering, do I put my head in my hands and cry the way I want to? This person is telling me this story, and I want to react the way they need to see this feels. Like this is how a normal
And you say
reaction
you're
to
not a
this thing
humanist.
they need to know because they're telling me these stories as if it's like buying bananas on Tuesday, as I say.
Mm-hmm.
It's like nothing. They're just telling me this is why I messed up, and I am feeling crushed under the weight of this horror. And I'm like, they need to know this is how it feels, and so I'm going to cry, and I'll be like, no, no, because this has happened in the past where I will become so sad, and then they feel guilty, like they broke me, and they're like, I'm sorry, and then they'll withhold. Will they withhold in the future because they know that it bothers me? So there's this balance that I don't know if I've figured out quite yet. I guess it depends on the client, depends on the patient, whether or not will they continue to be honest with you if you are honest with them. But do they take ownership of your bad feelings?
That is a real balance. I've cried in front of a client twice. Uh, both times I would say it was kind of involuntary. Both times it had to do with talking about child abuse, specifically children being left alone, abandoned. That's a big button for me. I really struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I know the one client, she was like, "What is happening?" Like, no, I don't need you to fix this. I don't need you to take care of this. That's really sad. That makes me really sad to hear that happen
Yep.
to you.
That same thing happened to me where I was like involuntary. I was just watching this person. I realized like tears were coming down, and I wasn't bawling, I wasn't shaking, sobbing. It was just like genuine, honest tears. And I would dab my eyes as they came. And after she'd finished, and there was this moment of stillness, and she thanked me. She was like, "Thank you for letting me say that kind of thing." And it was like
Mm-hmm.
it was so touching that. But I remember crying involuntarily. That's interesting. That was
Yeah. And thank you for seeing me. Another huge,
Yeah.
it reframes it for people. I'm not saying therapists shouldn't incentivize making themselves cry. It's a bad idea.
Both times it was involuntary for Taylor and I. Involuntary.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with crying, point blank. Crying is not a bad thing. I think that if every time you go in to see your therapist, like, and then what happened? At some point, you're like, dude, can you just listen to me and not make this about your own emotional experience?
Oh yeah, man, that would be horrible if they just turned it into like, this is so bad. Stop talking. I can't handle it.
Oh my gosh,
What?
can you imagine your therapist saying that to you?
Well,
Go ahead.
the best. Yeah. Let's move on to the best.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. The worst was kind of the same. Just this overall sense of I'm not enough to solve this for you. That feeling is the worst part.
Oh, I hate it.
The best experience as a therapist, I mentioned that person who came in and was going to kill themselves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
why that turned into a best is because let's see here, they were in an extraordinarily bad situation at home. I mean, like horror movie bad. And they had spent the last 10 years of that home situation being told they were the problem. And what came out of that hospitalization, was everything changed. This lady left her husband. This lady got her kids out of the house. This lady moved across the state. I mean, it was a process after that, but that was the first domino to fall that needed to fall for her to reclaim her personhood. So that was the best.
That is
Or when
great.
people go through things and that they think they can't anymore, and they go, "Oh my gosh, the progress, we did it." Or when people recognize their own growth, or when people feel competent and capable, like the hard clients who are like, "I don't need this anymore." Oh, dude, freaking feed that straight into my veins
Yeah.
when they recognize
Yeah.
they don't need you anymore.
Exactly.
The best.
They're like, I think this can be our last session, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
so too. You've done very well. And
Yeah.
like I've mentioned, there's this contradiction between being a therapist. Either um, they've done the work that you walk them through, and they see the benefit,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't do the work and it's your fault and you feel bad that they don't progress. At least for me. My best was, man, I can think of so many good things, and it's hard to find the best. So I'll mention a few good things that just like are constant filling up my tank whenever I think about these few instances. One was the child that we worked through trauma. I sent Taylor a drawing that kid had drawn of their
The
abuser, and
monster.
the
Yeah.
monster, and it was a monster cowering over this child who was like peeing their pants or something, and it was a very scary drawing actually. And going from that and to um, her behavioral issues went away. Her mom was telling me that she was doing a lot better at home, and she was able to talk about the trauma from a distance, not avoiding it, not getting triggered by it, and yeah. So that was something that I really appreciated. My first real success working with trauma with kids, and I don't think she um it wasn't this big thing. It was just like she was just processed as part of her life, but I saw it as a big thing because I've seen so many kids who haven't. So
Yeah.
she just saw it as like a course of life. This isn't something that happened. I'm getting over it, whatever. But I was like, man, I'm so glad that we processed this. Another one was a guy who came into my office, a military member who um, was dealing with alcoholism, and he hated himself when he thought about alcohol. He hated himself when he bought it, hated himself driving home, hated himself when he drank it. And he's talked about it impacting his life, and his scores were very high for his alcohol consumption. I use assessments a lot. I don't know if Taylor does as much, but I used the Audit C, and he scored very high for compulsive drinking that he didn't want to do. So I was like, we should think about inpatient, just a 30-day stay. And he came back, and I remember the first time I met with him, his hair was done. He had lost 5 pounds. I mean, he was bright eyed. You can see it in someone's eyes when they're
Mm-hmm.
off alcohol for a while. And not only that, his compulsion was better. He was like, it comes, and I really want it. Um, um, but then I call my mom or something, or he's like, I notice the compulsion, and I didn't notice it before. I just notice it, and I can sit with that feeling of like, I want, and I can breathe through it. But noticing it is such a big deal. And his hair was combed. I think I said that his hair was combed. And just his eyes were blue. I remember seeing his blue eyes when he came back into my office, and I was like, I didn't even notice that. I think you were looking at the floor the whole time. They're red and poofy or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
man, that was a beautiful time. And then the third one was a member who was going through a divorce, traumatic relationship betrayal, and threats to his life, honestly, by an ex impacted his current relationship. And through the course of this group, this cognitive behavioral therapy group dealing with trauma, he noticed his extremes in thinking. He noticed his projection of his fears onto his current relationship, and he turned the divorce proceedings around. They reconciled the relationship. He also, I imagine, I saw him a lot at the gym after that, and on Facebook, I just saw him being more fit than I've ever seen him. And he told me, um, if it weren't for you, I'd be a divorced dad again.
Hmm.
And I know it's not true. As a therapist, you're like, oh, that's nice, but it's like, because you did the work, dude. It's not like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like a doctor who sets the bone and like, I set the bone. I did that, whether you're unconscious or not. I set your bone. It's like, I
Yeah.
need you to grab your thigh and move it to this. I can't do it, so I need you to do it.
Yeah. You're friends with your clients on Facebook?
No, no. He reaches out to me, and I
Oh.
thank him. But honestly, Facebook sends me like, you might know so and so, because we're tied together
Oh,
in
gotcha.
certain ways too. So I see him, but no,
Yeah.
no. I am in no way friends with my clients on Facebook. No, no, no,
Let's
no,
say,
no.
cut that.
I'm
I
not
mean, you're
friends with my
talking
clients
about,
on Facebook.
yeah, you're talking about these moments of growth, and like I'm smiling, and Pete has seen me smiling at this, but no one else will, because we're not going to release the full video. But like that thing you're talking about, I know so viscerally. Like that lady I talked about who left her family, like one of the real paydays for me was when her husband took her to divorce court. And she was so terrified. And she's like, he's going to say these things. He's going to trip me up. And I said, great, here's what you say. Let's talk about the truth of what you're talking about. And I calmed her down. And she went into that courtroom by herself. There was literally no one there to support her. And she not only talked him down, made him look like an idiot in front of the judge. The judge took what she wanted and doubled it. And I'm not
Oh
talking
my
money. I'm
goodness.
talking like she got full custody of the kids, and he had to go to anger management, and there was only supervised visitations allowed, which is extremely appropriate, all because of what she said to this man in front of a judge by herself. And I was like, dude, that's it.
Wow.
That's
Holy
the
cow.
payday. The best. The
Yes.
best. She got herself out of that situation in a way that nobody else could have.
And
Oh.
you're just watching it happen. So as a therapist,
Well, not
you're
just.
well, I mean,
I'm
you're
actively involved in part of it.
I don't know. For me, I have this strong fix it feeling, and so I feel like I am much more hands off in people's lives than I don't know, I otherwise could have been. So when they do well, I don't take a lot of ownership of it, and I could, maybe that's one way Taylor and I differ. I if somebody had done that, I would be like, man, good job, you had it within you, and I don't know how much of me brought that out, but you did it.
I'm halfway there on that. She did it because she did it. Like nobody did what she did but her. And I got to help facilitate her recognizing that in herself.
I've had a client tell me, I'd be dead if it weren't for you. Like, you saved my life.
Those feel good.
Those, yeah.
Honestly, the things that mean the most to me, I love getting thank you letters. Even if they didn't, like, their lives haven't been changed, they haven't, like, just thank you for your work. The best.
Oh yeah. I had
The money is nice too.
man, so many good things. It's hard. Yeah, it's just like the worst things. It's not a single event. It's like a bunch of good things that happen to end up to be the best. I end up having more good days than bad days. And the good
Easily.
days are huge. And the bad days are scary but optimistic, and the good days are just beautiful, just wonderful.
Yes.
When I got
Yes.
fired from QBH and realized I didn't have my own license, I got letters from clients who were saying, do you have your own practice? Like, it took me so long to get into therapy. You and I jived, and I wish that I could see you again. Is there any way? And I had to be like, sorry. They kind of screwed me. I didn't say this, but my thought was they kind of screwed me over. But I know a lot of good therapists there that could help you. One kid I was working with, her mom stopped me and was like, can you see so-and-so? Oh, so-and-so won't be there on Thursday. And I was like, neither will I. I was kind of salty at the time. I was kind of pissed off, but I was like, you're going to have to talk to management about why I won't see your kid anymore. We'll talk about it later, but there's an art form to closing therapy, like terminating, as they say.
Yes.
Gently.
How to say goodbye.
How to say goodbye. Yeah. You don't say it like I was forced to. You have to gently let them know it's coming, and then gently let them go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was horrible. Anywho.
Well, I think we did it. I don't know that we actually did it, but
well, it was interesting ramblings for me. There's nothing I like.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. It's one of those things where, like, again, like I got what I wanted out of this.
Well, thanks to anybody else who came along too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, as always, Pete, it's been super lovely.
Yes, it was wonderful. Thanks for talking to us.
Yeah, love you lots.